The night sky over the Zulian homeworld glowed with 3 moons each, a different shade of blue. Princess Xalara of House Mavis stood on her balcony, her violet skin shimmering under the moonlight as she gazed up at the stars somewhere out there. Humans existed, creatures she had only seen in transmissions and official reports. Tomorrow, she would meet one face to face, not just any human but the one chosen to be her mate. Xalara shivered, despite the warm night air, her 4 arms wrapping around herself in a gesture of self-comfort. Her species had evolved from ocean dwellers, and even after millions of years on land, Zulians retained their gill slits and dual cardiovascular systems. One for each set of lungs. Humans, by contrast, were so strangely formed with only 2 arms and legs, a single heart, and skin in shades of tan, pink, and brown, rather than the vibrant purples, blues, and greens of Zulian people. Soft chime indicated someone at her chamber door. Enter, Xalara called, turning from the balcony. Lady Kira. Her handmaiden glided into the room, all 4 of her arms carrying different items for the princess, her scales a soft blue that marked her as being from the southern archipelago. Your ceremonial attire has been prepared for tomorrow, my lady, she said. Would you like to review it? Xalara nodded and followed Kira to the dressing area where an elaborate outfit hung on a display form. The fabric was traditional Zulian silk woven from the cocoons of water moths, iridescent purple with gold accents that would complement Xalara's royal scale coloration. The cut was modern, with modifications made to accommodate human sensibilities. According to the cultural briefings humans found certain Zulian physical features unsettling. Will it please the human? Do you think? Xalara asked. Running one finger along the smooth fabric, Kira arranged the accessories on a nearby table, her movements efficient and practiced. It follows the guidelines provided by the human diplomatic team, she answered. The high collar covers your gill slits, and the sleeves are designed to make your secondary arms less prominent. Apparently, these features can disturb humans. Xalara felt a flicker of annoyance. Why must I be the one to change my appearance for their comfort? She asked. I am a princess of House Mavis, 3rd daughter to the High Chancellor of the Zulian Empire. Should not the human adapt to our ways? Kira lowered her eyes. Your father believes this alliance is essential. My lady, the humans have technologies. We need and control resource-rich systems that could solve our energy crisis. We must make certain accommodations. The reminder of her duty silenced Xalara's protest. The Empire had been struggling for decades. Depleted minerals on their homeworld and limited access to new resource systems had created economic hardship and political instability. The humans, with their aggressive expansion and innovative technologies, offered a solution, but they drove a hard bargain. The alliance treaty included a marriage bond, a practice the Zulians had used for millennia to secure political agreements. My lady, Kira said hesitantly. You should prepare yourself for tomorrow. Reports suggest that humans can be unpredictable. Their behaviors do not always follow logical patterns. They are driven by emotions in ways our people find excessive. Xalara smiled at her handmaiden's concern. I have studied humans extensively, Kira. I understand their peculiarities. They lack the control and discipline of Zulian culture, but they compensate with remarkable adaptability and creativity, qualities our people sometimes lack. After Kira departed, Xalara returned to the balcony, her mind filled with questions about the human she would meet. Reports identified him as Commander Alex Foster, a military officer with diplomatic training. The file contained his image, but Xalara found it difficult to distinguish between humans. Their facial structures all seemed so similar to her unaccustomed eyes. The morning arrived too quickly. Xalara awoke to the sound of ceremonial bells announcing the human delegation's approach. She bathed in the traditional minerals that enhanced the luster of her scales, then submitted to Kira's ministrations as her handmaiden helped her dress in. The ceremonial attire, the outfit felt restrictive, the high collar uncomfortable against her sensitive gill slits. But Xalara reminded herself of her duty to House Mavis and the Empire. This discomfort was a small price for her people's security. When she was fully dressed, Kira stepped back to assess the effect. You look magnificent, my lady, she said. Your father will be proud. Xalara studied her reflection in the polished stone mirror. The outfit did complement her features, but she barely recognized herself with her secondary arms partially concealed and her gill slits hidden beneath the high collar. She looked almost human, a thought that disturbed her more than she wanted to admit. A senior attendant arrived to escort her to the Great Hall, where the human delegation would be received. Zalara followed the ancient stone corridors of the Imperial Palace, her ancestral home for 20 generations. The walls decorated with living crystal that grew in intricate patterns recording the history of her people. As she approached the Great Hall, Zalara could hear voices, some speaking the formal tones of High Zulian, others in the strange flat sounds of human English. She had learned the language as part of her preparation, but hearing it spoken by native speakers was different, the sounds harsher than in her lessons. The massive doors to the Great Hall swung open, and Zalara entered head high, shoulders back as befitted a princess of House Mavis. The hall fell silent as she processed down the central aisle toward where her father stood with a group of humans. High Chancellor Mavis, a towering figure with deep purple scales and an elaborate crest that signified his royal lineage, turned as she approached. "My daughter," he said formally, in High Zulian before switching to English. "May I present Princess Zalara, third daughter of House Mavis." Zalara focused her attention on the humans. They were smaller than she expected, though still taller than most species in the Galactic Alliance. Their delegation consisted of 4 individuals, 3 in formal attire that appeared military in design with insignia and decorations, the 4th in what appeared to be civilian clothing. To her surprise, one of the humans stepped forward, a female, not the male commander she had been told to expect. She was tall for a human with dark skin and close-cropped hair, her uniform adorned with symbols of rank greetings. "Princess Zalara," the human female said in carefully pronounced Zulian. "I am Captain Samantha Wright of the Terran Federation. We bring greetings from Earth and all human worlds." Zalara blinked in confusion. This was not what she had been prepared for. Where was Commander Foster, the human she was meant to bond with? She looked to her father, who appeared equally surprised. Chancellor Mavis recovered quickly, gesturing to the prepared ceremonial space. "We welcome the representatives of humanity to the Zulian Empire," he said. "May our peoples find common ground and mutual benefit." Formal greetings continued, but Zalara barely heard them. Her attention fixed on Captain Wright, who seemed to be the leader of the delegation, contrary to everything Zalara had been told about human gender roles and military structure. This female appeared to be in command. When the formalities concluded, Chancellor Mavis signaled for a recess and drew Zalara aside along with his senior advisor. "There has been a change," he explained in a low voice. "Commander Foster was reassigned. Captain Wright has taken his place as the human representative, but Father Zalara began our arrangement." Chancellor Mavis raised a hand to silence her. "The terms of the alliance have been modified. The humans do not practice bonding ceremonies as we do. Captain Wright is here to escort you to Earth, where you will serve as cultural ambassador for 1 standard year. The alliance will proceed through standard diplomatic channels." Zalara struggled to process this information. No bonding, but still she would go to Earth. "To live among humans, I do not understand. Father, is this not a diminishment of our position? The humans promised a bonding to seal our alliance." Chancellor Mavis looked weary. The crest on his head slightly dulled, a sign of stress in their species. "The humans have different customs, daughter, to them. Political bonding is archaic. They have offered technological exchange and resource-sharing agreements more valuable than any ceremonial union." Before Zalara could respond, Captain Wright approached. "Permission to join you?" she asked, her accent making the Zulian words sound strangely melodic. "Chancellor." Mavis gestured for her to join them. "I understand this change may be unexpected," Princess Captain Wright said, "but I assure you the Terran Federation values this alliance highly. Your role as cultural ambassador is crucial to building understanding between our peoples." Zalara studied the human female, noting the directness of her gaze. Another peculiarity of humans: they did not observe the Zulian custom of avoiding eye contact with those of higher status. "I was prepared for a different arrangement, Captain," she said carefully. Samantha nodded, a human gesture Zalara had studied. "Yes, the initial proposal included a ceremonial union, but our leadership determined that such an arrangement would be viewed negatively by our citizens. Humans have not practiced political marriages for centuries." The concept seemed strange to Zalara, whose entire life had been shaped by the understanding that her marriage would serve political ends. How then do humans form alliances between powerful families, she asked. We don't, Captain Wright replied, not formally. Families hold no official political power in our systems. Individuals are elected or appointed based on merit, not bloodlines. Chancellor Mavis made a gesture indicating the conversation should move to more practical matters. Princess Xalara will depart for. The human vessel Starlight Explorer was unlike any ship Xalara had traveled on before. Zulian ships were organic in design, with curved corridors and living systems that responded to touch, and thought the human ship was all straight lines and right angles with mechanical systems and artificial materials that felt cold and lifeless to Xalaras. Sensitive Skin Captain Samantha Wright led Xalara through the corridors, crew members stopping to stare at the Zulian princess before remembering their manners and returning to their duties. Most humans had never seen a Zulian in person, and Xalaras' royal purple coloration and forearms drew attention despite her attempts to appear unobtrusive. These are your quarters, Captain Wright said, stopping before a door that slid open automatically. We've modified this section to match Zulian environmental preferences. The gravity, temperature, humidity, and atmospheric composition can all be adjusted to your comfort. Xalara stepped into the room surprised. By the effort that had been made, the space was larger than she expected, with curved furniture that approximated Zulian design. A sleeping pool had been installed in one corner filled with what appeared to be a mineral solution, similar to what she used at home. You have been thorough in your preparations, Captain, Xalara said, struggling to hide her surprise. Samantha smiled, an expression Xalara was still learning to interpret in humans. We want your stay with us to be comfortable, Princess, the captain said, both here on the ship and later on Earth. This alliance matters to us. Xalara ran a hand along the edge of the sleeping pool, testing the water temperature with one finger. The minerals smell synthetic, she observed. But adequate, Captain. Wright nodded. Our scientists did their best to recreate your home environment, but there may be details we missed. Please let us know of any adjustments needed. The captain showed her how to use the various human systems, the environmental controls, the communication devices, the food synthesizers, all designed with interfaces that could accommodate Zulian anatomy. The tour concluded with an introduction to the ship's artificial intelligence system. This is Artemis, the ship's, Samantha explained. Artemis can answer questions, help you navigate the ship, and address any concerns when I'm not available. Greetings, Princess Xalara, a pleasant female voice said. I am programmed with extensive information about Zulian physiology, culture, and preferences. Please do not hesitate to request assistance. Xalara had heard of human artificial intelligence systems, but experiencing one directly was unsettling. The voice seemed almost alive, yet came from nowhere and everywhere at once in Zulian culture. Such technologies were considered disrespectful imitations of consciousness. I'll leave you to settle in, Captain Wright said tomorrow. If you're feeling adjusted, I'd like to introduce you to key crew members and begin your orientation to Earth customs after. The captain departed. Xalara explored her quarters more thoroughly, opening compartments and examining the human artifacts. The synthesized sleeping pool was a poor substitute for the living waters of home, but would maintain her scale's health adequately. The gravity was lighter than she was accustomed to, making her movements feel strangely effortless. Kira unpacked Xalara's belongings, arranging her attire and personal items to create a sense of familiarity in the alien environment. The handmaiden had been permitted to accompany Xalara as her personal attendant, a concession the humans had readily granted. This place is strange, my lady, Kira said, her voice low, even though they had been assured their quarters were private. The air tastes wrong, and the surfaces are too hard. Xalara touched a wall, feeling the cool, smooth material so different from the responsive living walls of Zulian architecture the humans have tried to accommodate us. She said, we should appreciate their efforts. Kira made a gesture of acceptance, but her expression remained doubtful. They are not what I expected, my lady, she admitted. I thought humans would be more. She paused, searching for the right word. Primitive. Their technology is different from ours, but impressive. Xalara nodded, her own preconceptions about humans shifting with each new observation. Captain Wright is not what I expected either. She admitted the human female was confident, direct, and seemed genuinely interested in Zulian comfort and well-being traits. Zalara had not anticipated based on the briefing material she had studied. That night, Zalara found sleep elusive. The unfamiliar hum of the human ship, its strange rhythms, and the slight variations in the environmental controls kept her senses alert. Eventually, she rose from the sleeping pool and wrapped herself in a robe. Artemis, the ship's voice inquired. "Is there a problem?" Princess Zalara, startled, still unaccustomed to the disembodied voice. "I am having difficulty adjusting to the ship," she admitted. The AI was silent for a moment, then spoke. "Would you like me to adjust the environmental settings? Perhaps play some Zulian ambient sounds to help you rest?" Zalara considered the offer. Yes, that might help. Soft sounds filled the room. The gentle lapping of water against stone. The distant calls of coastal birds from the Zulian homeworld. Familiar, comforting sounds that gradually eased Zalara's tension. "Thank you, Artemis," she said, surprised by the A's thoughtfulness. "You are welcome, Princess," Artemis replied. "Captain Wright anticipated you might experience difficulty adjusting and loaded these sound files specifically for your comfort." Zalara settled back into the sleeping pool. The captain had been more considerate than expected, perhaps. This journey would not be as difficult as she had feared. The next morning, Zalara prepared for her first full day aboard the human vessel. Kira helped her dress in an outfit that balanced Zulian traditional elements with modifications for human comfort. Her secondary arms were left uncovered. A small act of cultural pride, Captain Wright arrived precisely at the arranged time, accompanied by a human female with pale skin and hair the color of copper. "This is Lieutenant Amy Garcia, our cultural liaison," Captain Wright introduced. "She will be working closely with you during your stay on Earth." Amy Garcia made a formal gesture that approximated a Zulian greeting. "It is an honor to meet you, Princess," she said in carefully practiced Zulian. "I've studied your culture extensively and look forward to learning more directly from you." Zalara returned the greeting, impressed by the human's attempt at Zulian customs. The effort suggested a level of respect she had not anticipated. The day proceeded, with tours of the ship's facilities and introductions to various crew members. Zalara observed the humans in their environment, noting their interactions, their hierarchical structure so different from the caste-based society of the Zulian Empire. Humans seemed to move between roles with a fluidity that would be unthinkable in Zulian culture. In the ship's mess hall, Zalara experienced her first meal among humans. Lieutenant Garcia had arranged for Zulian-compatible food but encouraged Zalara to observe human eating habits if she wished. The experience was fascinating and slightly disturbing. Humans consumed animal flesh with apparent enjoyment, a practice that existed in primitive Zulian history but had been abandoned millennia ago. "Would you like to try something human-compatible?" Captain Wright asked. Noticing Zalara's interest, "Our medical team has identified several Earth foods that should be safe for Zulian consumption." Zalara hesitated, then nodded, her curiosity overcoming her caution. She was here to learn. After all, the captain returned with a small plate containing what she identified as fruits from Earth. Zalara carefully picked up a small red berry following the captain's demonstration of how to eat it. The flavor burst across her tongue, sweet and tart simultaneously. "Unlike anything in Zulian cuisine." "Interesting," she said, reaching for another. Samantha smiled. "Good strawberries are a favorite on Earth. We thought you might enjoy them." As the meal concluded, Zalara found herself engaged in conversation with several human officers. Their questions about Zulian culture direct, but not impolite. She answered carefully, aware that she represented her people to these humans, just as they likely saw themselves as representatives of humanity. That afternoon, Lieutenant Garcia began Zalara's orientation to Earth, a systematic introduction to human customs, geography, political structures, and social norms. The information was overwhelming in its complexity. Earth was a single planet, but contained thousands of distinct cultures, languages, and belief systems, unlike the unified empire of Zulian world. "So do you maintain cohesion with such diversity?" Zalara asked. Amy smiled. "We don't always," she admitted. "Humans have a long history of conflict stemming from our differences. But we've also learned that diversity can be a strength, bringing different perspectives and solutions to problems." The concept was foreign to Zulian thinking, which valued unity and conformity above all else. Dissent was permitted within specific parameters, But radical difference was seen as threatening to imperial stability. As the day ended, Zalara returned to her quarters with much to consider. Her preconceptions about humans shifting with each new piece of information. They were more complex than she'd been led to believe. More diverse, more adaptable, and in some ways more sophisticated. Kira helped her into the sleeping pool, the handmaiden full of questions about what Zalara had observed, the humans' technology and customs fascinating her despite her initial suspicion. "They are strange, my lady." "But not in the ways I expected," Kira said, as she arranged Zalara's attire for the next day. Zalara floated in the mineral bath, considering this observation. "Yes," she agreed, "they are strange but interesting. Perhaps this year among them will be educational in ways we did not anticipate." Earth appeared on the view screen. A blue and green sphere swirled with white clouds, beautiful in its alien way. Zalara stood on the bridge of the Starlight Explorer, watching as the human homeworld grew larger. Her 4 hands clasped tightly in front of her to hide their trembling. Captain Wright stood beside her. "That's home," she said, her voice carrying a warmth Zalara had come to associate with humans discussing their planet. "We've arranged for you to stay at our diplomatic compound in a region called Colorado. The climate there is dry and the altitude higher than many Earth regions, which our environmental specialists thought might be more comfortable for your physiology." Zalara nodded, absorbing this information along with the sight of the approaching planet. So much water. She observed the oceans of her homeworld covered less than 30% of the surface, while Earth's blue seas dominated the planets. Amantha smiled. "Earth is about 70% water, though much of it is too salty for human consumption without processing. Fresh water is a valuable resource on our world." The ship moved into orbit around Earth, a process Zalara watched with scientific interest. Human orbital mechanics differed from Zulian approaches in subtle ways that reflected their different evolutionary paths and technological development. "A shuttle will take us to the surface," Captain Wright explained. "The descent can be uncomfortable for some species. The changing pressure and gravity fluctuations. Please let me know if you experience any distress." The shuttle proved to be a small vessel designed specifically for atmospheric entry. Zalara and Kira were strapped into specially designed seats that accommodated their forearms and different body structure. Lieutenant Garcia joined them along with Captain Wright and 2 security personnel. The shuttle detached from the main ship and began its descent. Zalara felt a moment of panic. This small vessel was all that stood between them and the vacuum of space, then the death's grip of gravity as they plunged toward the planet. Her secondary heart began beating rapidly, a physiological response to stress. "Are you all right?" Princess Lieutenant Garcia asked, noticing Zalara's gill slits flaring. With rapid breathing, Zalara forced herself to control her reactions, focusing on the breathing techniques taught to Zulian royal children. "Yes," she said, "I am merely adjusting to the sensation." The shuttle shook as it hit Earth's atmosphere, flames visible through the small viewports as the friction superheated the air around them. Captain Wright seemed entirely unconcerned by this, suggesting it was a normal part of the process for humans. Gradually, the shaking subsided as the shuttle passed through the upper atmosphere and began a more controlled descent. The viewports now showed clouds and glimpses of the landscape below, mountains and forests in shades of green and brown, so different from the purples and oranges of Zulian terrain. The landing was smoother than Zalara expected, the shuttle touching down with only a slight bump on what Captain Wright identified as a military base. "This is Peterson Space Force Base," the captain explained as they prepared to disembark. "Well, transfer to ground. Transportation here to take you to the diplomatic compound." Stepping out of the shuttle, Zalara experienced Earth directly. For the first time, the gravity was stronger than on the human ship, making her movements feel sluggish, and her ceremonial attire uncomfortably heavy. The air, though filtered through a breathing apparatus provided by the humans, smelled strange, rich with unfamiliar organic compounds, and the sunlight felt different. The star Earth orbited, emitting a spectrum slightly shifted from what her eyes were accustomed to. A small delegation waited to greet them, human officials in formal attire, standing at attention as Zalara descended the shuttle ramp. She recognized the diplomatic protocols from her briefings and responded, with appropriate Zulian gestures of greeting, "Welcome to Earth, Princess Zalara." A tall human female with light brown skin and silver-streaked hair said, "I am Secretary Elena Martinez, representing Earth's United Diplomatic Corps. We are honored by your presence and look forward to this historic cultural exchange between our people. Xalara inclined her head in the manner of Zulian royalty, acknowledging those of high but not equal status. I bring greetings from the Zulian Empire and High Chancellor, Mavis, she responded. Her voice amplified slightly by the breathing apparatus. I look forward to learning about your world and sharing knowledge of mine. The formalities concluded quickly, the humans seeming to sense Xalara's discomfort in the Earth's environment. They were escorted to ground vehicles, large black conveyances with tinted windows that Lieutenant Garcia explained would shield Xalara from public view during this initial transition. The journey to the diplomatic compound passed in a blur of new sensations, the smooth movement of the vehicle so different from Zulian transports, glimpses of human settlements through the windows, buildings of various shapes and sizes, arranged in patterns that seemed chaotic to Xalara's eyes. Humans, moving about their daily lives unaware of the alien observer in their midst. The diplomatic compound when they arrived was a collection of buildings surrounded by walls and gardens in what Lieutenant Garcia described as a secluded area of Colorado. Your residence has been prepared with Zulian environmental controls and furnishings imported at great expense, she explained as they approached the largest structure, a building with clean lines and large windows set against a backdrop of mountains inside. Xalara found a space that had been carefully designed to approximate Zulian living quarters, with organic curves and living materials interspersed with human technology. The central room featured a shallow pool similar to the communal gathering spaces in Zulian homes, while side chambers had been equipped with sleeping pools and hygiene facilities, adapted to Zulian physiology. You have been thorough in your preparations, Xalara said, impressed despite herself by the effort the humans had. Maid Secretary Martinez smiled. We wanted to create a space where you could feel comfortable while still experiencing Earth, she said. Our scientists and cultural experts worked with the information provided by your government to design these quarters. After the secretary and her staff departed, leaving only Lieutenant Garcia and a small security detail captain. Wright approached Xalara. I'll be returning to my duties, Princess, she said. But I'll visit when my schedule allows. Lieutenant Garcia will be your primary contact and guide during your stay. Xalara felt an unexpected reluctance at the captain's departure, having grown accustomed to her direct manner and practical approach to problems. Thank you for your assistance, Captain, she said formally. Samantha smiled at human expression Xalara was finally learning to read correctly. No need for thanks, Princess, she replied. It's been an honor to escort you to Earth. I look forward to hearing about your experiences here when I return. The following days were a whirlwind of orientation sessions, meetings with human officials, and carefully orchestrated public appearances. Xalara learned about human history, art, music, and politics. She answered endless questions about Zulian culture, technology, and biology, some so personal they made her gill slits flutter in embarrassment. Lieutenant Garcia proved to be an efficient and knowledgeable guide, though she lacked the warmth Xalara had found in Captain Wright. She followed protocols perfectly, but seemed unable to understand Xalara's occasional confusion or moments of homesickness. One morning, approximately 2 Earth weeks after her arrival, Xalara was scheduled to visit a human educational facility, what Garcia called a university, to meet with scholars studying xenobiology and interspecies communication. Kira helped her dress in an outfit that balanced Zulian tradition with concessions to human aesthetic sensibilities. Her gill slits partially visible, a small rebellion against the initial guidelines that had suggested hiding them completely. The university campus was the first human space Xalara had visited that wasn't specifically prepared for her presence. Students and faculty stared openly as she passed, some pointing or taking images with their devices, despite the security team attempting to maintain a respectful distance. Professor Linda Morgan, the head of the xenobiology department, greeted Xalara with enthusiasm. Her scientific curiosity barely contained behind professional courtesy. Princess Xalara, it's an extraordinary honor to welcome you to our campus, she said, her eyes moving over Xalara's form with undisguised interest. We have so many questions about Zulian biology and evolution. If you're comfortable discussing such matters. The professor led them to a lecture hall where a group of human scholars and students waited, their expressions ranging from awe to scientific detachment. Zalara was positioned at the front of the room with Lieutenant Garcia. Beside her to facilitate the discussion, the questions began politely enough inquiries about Zulian evolutionary history, the function of dual cardiovascular systems, the purpose of secondary arms, but gradually became more personal. How do Zulians reproduce? What is the purpose of color-changing scales? How does Zulian digestion work? Questions that would be considered deeply inappropriate in Zulian culture. Lieutenant Garcia noticed Xalara's discomfort. Princess Xalara is a diplomatic representative, not a research subject, she reminded the group firmly. Perhaps we could focus on cultural exchange rather than biological details. Professor Morgan looked embarrassed. Of course, my apologies, Princess. Our scientific curiosity sometimes overrides our manners. 4 months into her stay on Earth, Zalara found herself more comfortable with human customs and environments. She no longer required the breathing apparatus except in certain high-pollution zones, and had adjusted to the stronger gravity her body, adapting as Zulians had evolved to do her diplomatic duties, had expanded beyond formal meetings, to include cultural events, educational programs, and even recreational activities designed to showcase human diversity. Lieutenant Garcia still served as her official liaison, but Zalara had begun to form connections with other humans as well. Diane Foster, a protocol officer who helped navigate complex human social rules, often joined them for meals, explaining nuances of human behavior that Garcia overlooked. Caitlin Blake, a xenobiologist who, unlike Professor Morgan, approached Zulian physiology with respectful curiosity, rather than clinical detachment, became a regular visitor to the diplomatic compound discussing evolutionary biology and comparative adaptations. Most surprising was her growing friendship with Megan Oliver, one of the security personnel assigned to her detail. The human female had approached Xalara after witnessing her struggling with an exercise routine designed by the medical team to help her maintain muscle tone in Earth's gravity. No disrespect, Princess, but you're doing that all wrong, Megan had said, then immediately looked embarrassed at her bluntness. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. Xalara had been startled by the direct criticism, but also intrigued. The security officer was the first human, besides Captain Wright, to speak to her without careful diplomatic filtering. Please explain. She had requested. Megan had demonstrated modifications to the exercises that would better support Zulian musculature and bone structure, showing a surprising knowledge of xenophysiology. I studied comparative anatomy before joining security, she explained when Zalara questioned her expertise. I find it helps to understand the beings I'm protecting. The exercise sessions became regular occurrences, Megan visiting the compound 3 times each Earth week to guide Zalara through routines specifically adapted to her physiology. Gradually, their conversations extended beyond physical training to include discussions of their respective cultures, families, and experiences. Zulian females usually have between 2 and 4 offspring, Megan asked during one session as she helped Zalara stretch her secondary arm muscles. Humans typically have 1 at a time, though. Twins and triplets happen occasionally. Zalara nodded, following Megan's demonstration of a movement designed to strengthen her core muscles. Zulian clutches typically contain 3 to 5 eggs, though only 2 or 3 usually develop to hatching. She explained, our reproduction is different from yours. Megan nodded without embarrassment or excessive curiosity, just accepting the information as naturally as if they were discussing the weather. This casual acceptance of difference was something Zalara had come to value in her human friend. During her 6th month on Earth, Captain Wright returned from another extended mission. Samantha, as Zalara had begun to think of her, arrived at the diplomatic compound with another container of ice cream and stories from the outer colonies. You look different, Samantha observed as they sat in what had become their usual spot in the garden. More comfortable, Hera. Xalara realized the human was right. She had changed, not just physically adapting to Earth's environment, but in her demeanor and behaviors. I feel different, she admitted. I understand humans better now, though. You still surprise me regularly. Samantha laughed. That's good to hear. I'd hate to think we became predictable. She studied Zalara with those direct human eyes that no longer seemed inappropriate. You've made friends here, haven't you? Real ones, not just diplomatic contacts. Zalara nodded. thinking of Diane, Caitlin, and especially Megan. Yes, she said. With some surprise, I believe I have. The captain looked pleased. I thought you might, she said. Humans can be standoffish at first, but once the novelty wears off, we tend to focus on individuals rather than species, most of us. Anyway, their conversation was interrupted by a call from Lieutenant Garcia. Captain Wright, Princess Zalara. A communication has arrived from the Zulian Empire marked urgent, Xalaris. Hearts quickened their pace as she and Samantha followed Garcia to the communications center, where a secure channel had been established with the Imperial Palace. Her father, High Chancellor Mavis, appeared on the screen, his normally vibrant purple scales looking dull with stress. My daughter, he began formally, then switched to the more intimate mode of High Zulian used only among family members. Disturbing developments have occurred in your absence. The Drakari Collective has approached the Imperial Council with a proposal for Alliance 1 that includes significant technological and resource sharing agreement. Zalara felt her gill slits flare with concern. The Drakari were a powerful species known for their militaristic expansion and rigid hierarchical structure. They had long viewed both the Zulian Empire and Human Federation as rivals. For galactic resources, an alliance with them would significantly shift the balance of power. There is more. Her father continued. They have specifically required a bonding ceremony between their High Commander Vorex and a member of the Imperial family. As part of the agreement, the Council is considering accepting their terms. Zalara understood immediately what this meant. She would be recalled home to fulfill the bonding that had originally been planned with the humans, but now with a Drakari commander. Instead, the implications were profound, not just for her personally but for galactic politics. A Zulian Drakari alliance would isolate the Human Federation, potentially leading to conflict. What of our arrangement with the humans? She asked, careful to maintain formal diplomatic language despite her internal turmoil. Chancellor Mavis made a gesture of uncertainty. The human alliance has brought benefits, but the Drakari offer resources we desperately need, particularly access to the Trellium fields in their territory, without which our energy production will fall 30% in the next cycle. The Council argues that the human cultural exchange, while valuable, does not address our immediate resource crisis. Zalara glanced at Captain Wright, who stood silently nearby. The human female showed no reaction to this news, maintaining the professional demeanor Zalara had come to respect. What would you have me do, father? She asked. Return home. The Chancellor said, the Council wishes to hear your assessment of the humans before making their final decision. Your experience will be valuable in determining our course. After the communication ended, Zalara turned to Samantha. How much of that did you understand? She asked. The captain met her gaze evenly enough to know you're being recalled home, because your people are considering an alliance with the Drakari instead of continuing with us, she said. Our translation software is quite good, Princess. Even for High Zulian. Zalara nodded, unsurprised by the humans' technological capabilities but uncertain how to proceed. This changes my position here, she said carefully. Samantha nodded. I should inform my superiors of this development, she said, her voice professional but with an undertone of concern that Zalara recognized from their months of acquaintance. The Drakari are not known for honoring their agreements. Princess, their history of absorbing their allies through gradual control of resources and infrastructure is well documented. After Captain Wright departed to make her report, Lieutenant Garcia helped Zalara prepare for an emergency meeting with Secretary Martinez and other high-ranking human officials. The implications of the Zulian Empire's potential shift in allegiance were significant for Earth politics and security. The meeting was tense. Human officials asking pointed questions about Drakari intentions and Zulian motivations. Questions Zalara could not fully answer, given her own limited information and divided loyalties. She was a princess of House Mavis, duty-bound to serve the Empire's interests. But her months on Earth had given her insights into humans that made her question whether an alliance with the Drakari would truly benefit her people. I must return home to report my observations to the Imperial Council, she said finally. That is my duty. But I will convey all I have learned about humans during my stay, including your concerns about Drakari intentions. Secretary Martinez studied her with an intensity that reminded Zalara of Captain Wright. We understand your position, Princess, she said carefully. But we hope you will consider the nature of both offers fairly. The Human Federation seeks partnership, while the Drakari history suggests they seek subjects, not allies. The preparations for Zalara's departure proceeded rapidly. Diplomatic protocols required formal farewells with Earth official statements to human media, and the packing of gifts and artifacts she'd acquired during her stay. Kira efficiently organized the logistics while Zalara attended to her official duties. The evening before her scheduled departure, Zalara found herself in the garden again, seated beside the small pond that had become her favorite spot for reflection. The setting sun cast long shadows across the carefully tended plants while earthbirds called to each other in the trees. Princess Megan Oliver approached her security uniform. Impeccable as always. May I join you? Kalara gestured to the bench beside her. Please, she said. Megan sat maintaining a respectful distance, but her posture more relaxed than during their first meetings. I heard you're leaving tomorrow, she said. Kalara nodded. My father has requested my return to the imperial capital. Important decisions must be made. The imperial palace of the Zulian Empire rose from the shores of the Crimson Sea, its living towers spiraling toward the orange sky in patterns that recorded the history of House Mavis. Xalara stood on the ceremonial landing platform, her formal attire moving gently in the familiar warm breeze of her homeworld behind her. Samantha Wright and the human delegation waited, their expressions carefully neutral, but their bodies betraying tension. In subtle ways, Xalara had learned to recognize High Chancellor Mavis approached his ceremonial cape billowing around his tall figure, his scale color vibrant in the light of the Zulian sun. Welcome home, daughter, he said formally before switching to family speech. It is good to see you. Xalara performed the traditional greeting for returning royalty, her forearms moving in the precise patterns she'd learned as a child. I returned to serve the Empire, father, she replied, then gestured to the humans. I bring representatives of the Human Federation, who wish to address the Imperial Council. Chancellor Mavis acknowledged the human delegation with appropriate courtesy, though Zalara noticed his gill slits tightening slightly in what she recognized as stress. The political situation has become more complex in your absence, he said in low Zulian, the dialect used for private conversation. The Drakari delegation arrived 3 days ago. Commander Vorex has made his case to the council quite forcefully. The formalities of arrival continued as Zalara and the human delegation were escorted into the palace. Servants rushing to attend to luggage and protocol officers, explaining arrangements to the visitors. Zalara noticed Samantha's careful observation of everything from the living architecture to the interactions between different Zulian castes. The captain was gathering information, assessing the environment as she would before any important mission. Zalara was brought to her private chambers in the family wing of the palace room she had occupied since childhood, their familiar curves and colors, a stark contrast to the angular human spaces she'd grown accustomed to. Kira immediately began unpacking while palace servants hovered nearby, eager to assist the returned princess. The Imperial Council has scheduled a formal hearing for tomorrow, Chancellor Mavis informed her once they were alone in her receiving room. Both the Drakari and human proposals will be presented, followed by your report on the cultural exchange. The Council will then deliberate and make their recommendation to Zalara nodded, understanding the political choreography that would follow. Her father, as High Chancellor, held significant influence, but the Council of 12 representatives from noble houses and colonial worlds would need to support any alliance decision you have reviewed. The human proposal, she asked. The Chancellor made a gesture of affirmation. It is generous, perhaps too generous, which raises suspicion among some council members. What do humans truly seek from this alliance? Their offered concessions outweigh the apparent benefits. Their motivations are complex, Zalara said, choosing her words carefully. They value stability and peaceful exchange, but they also fear Drakari expansion. Captain Wright can explain the details of their proposal, but I can speak to their character as a people. Chancellor, Mavis studied his daughter with experienced eyes. You have changed, Zalara. He observed your speech patterns, your posture, even your scale patterns show subtle differences. Zalara acknowledged this truth. I have adapted to living among humans, father, and in doing so have learned much about them and about ourselves. That evening, Zalara met with Samantha and the human delegation. In their assigned quarters to prepare for the council presentation, the humans had been given a section of the diplomatic wing, modified with environmental controls to approximate Earth conditions. Though the architecture remained distinctly Zulian, Samantha had changed into a formal human uniform adorned with insignia, indicating her rank and achievements, a parallel to Zulian ceremonial attire, designed to impress the council. How should we approach the presentation, she asked as they reviewed their strategic. Zalara considered the question carefully. Be direct, she advised. The council respects clarity and precision. Avoid human diplomatic circling, focus on specific benefits and address potential concerns before they are raised. Above all, demonstrate respect but not submission. Zulians respond poorly to perceived weakness. The human delegation listened attentively, asking questions about council members, their histories, political leanings, and potential objections to the human proposal. Zalara provided insights that went beyond the official briefing materials, sharing her understanding of the personal and political dynamics at play. The next morning, Zalara, dressed in full imperial regalia, her scales polished to a high shine, her forearms adorned with the ceremonial bands of House Mavis, Kira worked efficiently arranging the complex outfit, each element carrying symbolic significance that would be read and interpreted by the council members. You appear troubled, my lady, Kira observed as she adjusted the final elements of Zalara's attire. Zalara met her handmaiden's gaze in the polished stone mirror. I am concerned for our people. She admitted the decision before the council will shape the Empire's future for generations. The choice between human and Drakari alliance is not simple. Kira lowered her eyes as tradition demanded when discussing matters above her station. The Drakari are more like us, my lady, she said carefully. Their biology, their hierarchical structure, their traditions of bonding to seal alliances, many believe an alliance with them would be more natural than one with humans. Zalara considered this perspective, one she knew was widely shared among her people. Perhaps, she acknowledged, but similarity does not always indicate compatibility. The Drakari view other species as resources to be managed, not partners. The humans, for all their strangeness, seek genuine exchange. The great hall of the imperial palace was filled to capacity when Zalara entered. Noble houses, colonial representatives, military officers, and diplomatic staff all gathered to witness the historic proceedings. The Drakari delegation occupied a position of honor to the right of the council. Dais, their tall, scaled forms similar to Zulians, but with distinctive ridged crests and darker coloration, the human delegation stood to the left. Samantha right at its center, her posture straight and dignified, despite being surrounded by beings who towered over her. High Chancellor Mavis called the proceedings to order. We gather to consider two paths forward for the Zulian Empire. He announced, his voice carrying throughout the hall. Alliances shape our future and must be chosen with wisdom. First, we will hear from Commander Vorax of the Drakari Collective. Commander Vorax stepped forward, his movements fluid and powerful, his scales shifting to display patterns of dominance and confidence. Honorable council members, he began, his voice deep and resonant. The Drakari Collective offers the Zulian Empire partnership based on natural alignment between our species. We share biology, culture, and values. The collective controls resources the Empire needs, particularly the trillium fields necessary for your energy production. We offer access to these fields, military protection against encroaching threats, and technological exchange. The commander continued, outlining the Drakari proposal in specific terms. The resource sharing, military cooperation, and territorial guarantees, all presented as generous offerings from a stronger power to a worthy ally. As tradition dictates, he concluded, we propose sealing this alliance through bonding between our houses, specifically between myself and Princess Zalara of House Mavis, uniting our bloodlines as we unite our people. Zalara maintained a neutral expression as the commander spoke. Though she noticed Samantha shifting slightly at the mention of the bonding proposal, the human captain had learned to control her expressions, but subtle tensions in her jaw and shoulders revealed her discomfort. Chancellor Mavis acknowledged Commander Vorax with appropriate ceremony, then turned to the human delegation captain, Samantha Wright. You may present the proposal of the human Federation. Samantha stepped forward, her smaller stature accentuated by the towering Zulian and Drakari figures around her. but her presence nonetheless commanding honorable chancellor esteemed council members. She began, her voice clear and confident. I bring an offer of true partnership between our peoples not based on dominance or traditional obligation, but on mutual respect and benefits. She outlined the human proposal addressing the Empire's resource needs with specific offers of Trellium, access technological assistance with energy efficiency and defensive cooperation, all without requiring political bonding or cultural concessions. The terms were indeed generous, as Zalara's father had noted, perhaps suspiciously so to those accustomed to the careful balance of traditional alliances unlike the Drakari. Samantha continued, We do not seek to absorb your culture or remake your society in our image. We value the differences between us, believing diversity leads to innovation and strength. Our alliance would be between equals, each maintaining sovereignty, while working together for mutual advancement. The council members listened impassively, though Zalara noted subtle indicators of their reactions. Gill slits widening in surprise at certain offers, scale patterns shifting to show interest or skepticism. The senior houses particularly seemed disturbed by the absence of traditional bonding in the human proposal, while colonial representatives appeared more receptive to the resource and technology aspects.